All right, so Cranston Burney has entered the table, and hopefully we'll be able to see on the screen. All right. All right. Are we ready to get started? I don't hear anyone else. Cranston, are you in the room or on the stage? Or I think we're on the stage. Okay. All right. Here we go. Um, let's see.
Participants. You click on participants.
Okay. All right. I'm looking for Cranston. I think he said he left the table. I'm hoping that means that he has jumped into the stage area. I see we're sitting here on the I guess we're here on the stage and looking to see if Cranston also double clicks and joins from the stage. I guess my problem was I didn't realize you had to be on the first floor to be able to get onto the stage. So I was informed by Cerise that I had to get onto the stage. All right. I'm hoping that we're all in the same location. Um, all right. Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I know hopefully Cranston will work his way in. And if you see Roxanne Bland somewhere out in the audience, I request that you all move her into the stage area as well. So thank you very much. This is Penelope Flynn and Otto, and we are from Discussions from the Otherhood, our podcast. We play it every Saturday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on TalkShoe. And Discussions from the Otherhood basically discusses everything about media, entertainment, and from the perspective of those of us from the diaspora. And tonight, those of us who are within that group are all, kind of blurs of a certain age. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, blurdism, before there were blurs, what we were, how it was that we kind of navigated this world before there was a category dedicated to who it is, that we are. And Otto and I had first started having a little bit of a conversation before we got started, where we, kind of were discussing what it is that we think a nerd is or a blurred is. And the blurred was a black nerd. And then Otto, of course, breaks it down, asking, then what is a nerd? And did you want to go through it or just?
Yeah, I mean, I know, even before we were talking,
Mm-hmm.
right? Still don't. What is the definition of a nerd? I mean,
Well,
for public consumption, what is the definition?
well, generally, I think of a nerd as somebody who's usually kind of brainy. Sometimes they consider awkward. That has, obsessive interests in things like gaming or music of a certain type, sciences, science fiction, horror, fantasy, film, buffs, people that trivia of different types. I think that's what most people,
Like Jeopardy trivia?
yeah, even that, yeah, I would consider people who are like that in those types of spaces as nerds.
Hmm.
What do you
So if
think?
you're a black person on Jeopardy, you'll be a blurred.
Probably, I would say yes. So, I mean, and that's what we're talking about, who it is that is a blurred and how we kind of define ourselves and what we did growing up when there wasn't that category. I mean, I think blurred is what, about 10 years old or so, that term, just about.
Hmm.
But before that, what were we? There was no real,
Well, the word nerd existed, right?
yes, there was. But, there was no term that we called black nerds. In fact, if you're a black person, you're a nerd, you're just a nerd. For instance, think of it this way. for Black people, I guess they lumped everybody who was an outsider into that category. I know earlier we were talking about Steve Urkel.
Right.
And you said, Urkel, would that be a nerd? Well, yeah, but I think only in the sense that he was an outsider, that he was not, supposedly cool guy until he did his transformation and turned himself into, a cool guy. And, but also it's kind of outside. Remember Revenge of the Nerds?
Yeah, but on the Steve Urkel show, Steve Urkel was the only one that looked like that, and dressed like that, and talked like that.
Right, but the thing is, you have to realize that, the fact that he was there at all, that they had like one Black person there that did that, and then he has to be
amongst a group of other Black people.
Right, but then it's like he has to be the
joke.
Yeah, or that now becomes the stereotype of what a Black person is.
Nobody wants to be associated with that.
Exactly.
No female or male.
Exactly. And then you have what Revenge of the Nerds, that the guy Lamar, that they have him, as being a nerd. But for all of us,
did you see him as a nerd though?
I just thought he was a Black gay guy. I didn't think that it was nerdy about it.
I don't understand
because they kind of categorize anything that is an outsider that they think is like unacceptable, and you have to figure also remember that finds its way into Green Book.
What do you mean?
That same concept that the major media would write a role of a Black man who is very smart, who is accomplished pianist, and act as if he's an outsider from his community, which he wasn't.
But in the movie it was.
Exactly, because they placed that he's an outsider.
But that's all that counts.
That's right, because he's smart and whatever. Because he would be classified as a nerd because they figure he is not in the bosom of what they consider.
Because the Black community doesn't value education and obsessiveness about certain things.
Right.
Listening to certain
intellectualism or those things. So I would think that.
But let's reverse it. Let's look at white nerds.
Okay.
Or people allowed it to be called just nerds, right?
Yes.
So you have a white nerd, and what do they have to exhibit in order to be considered nerds?
Well, just the things that I just said, some obsessive conversations and things that were related to, stats, science, horror, whatever, those creative endeavors are. That's what I would think.
But you have to be smart in order to be considered. You can't be a dumb nerd.
I don't think so. I mean, that's for other people to determine whether they think that's the case. I mean, like right here, I see like in our thing here with the 3 speakers, I see us, I see Cranston and a Frankie Smith, but I don't see Cranston on the screen.
Okay.
So interesting.
So the fact that we can't figure this out, are we nerds or not?
We are an embarrassment to nerds. Embarrassment to blurred community that we cannot figure this out. We're sorry. So I don't know whether or not we're speaking and they can hear us.
Are you able to give them mics, or since you're the host, can you do some stuff?
No, let's see.
Are you able to do things?
No, I can't do anything. I am not a host. I'm just an individual who's just here. So
like what's his name in the Blazing Saddles?
Yes.
Just a pawn.
Yes.
The game of life.
I'm a pawn. All right. So with regard to that we know have a general idea of what a nerd is, and then now when a Black.
We don't know whether people are hearing us.
Well,
this is being recorded at all.
Well, it says that we're live.
Oh.
So yeah.
So why can't other people talk?
I don't know. I do not know why they don't want to talk with us.
And this is all being generated by us.
Yes.
Or people who are Black.
Yes.
So, and we're all Black nerds.
Yes.
Who can't do this thing.
Yes. All right. Okay. So let's talk about your blerdy upbringing. Tell us, Otto, how was your upbringing with regard?
Well, I never considered myself a nerd.
Okay. Well,
I think for a lot of times people have this category, and sometimes they put you in that category, but you don't put yourself in that category,
right?
Unless it's a category of being the most handsome, sexiest ball player in the world. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You're not going to put yourself in a category that's, back in the day in the hood, if you were a smart person, you weren't called a nerd. You were called a brainiac.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So you call a brainiac. And so Brainiac.
But that's a positive thing. I mean, that's what it is. What do you think? Do you think Brainiac is not positive?
Well, Brainiac means that you're different because everybody's not calling everybody a Brainiac.
They're calling you Brainiac.
Well, I'm saying they called me a Brainiac, but they call people who were smart, allegedly smart, Brainiacs.
Did they call you Brainiac?
They did on occasion call me Brainiac.
Okay, there we go. So let's say a Brainiac would be the same thing. Like I say, that there is no term like blurred or anything that exists.
Yeah.
Black.
But the Brainiac thing had nothing to do with horror or sci-fi.
But that's only one part of it, of being somebody that was smart and got good grades. And I'm saying that beyond that, there are people, with other interests, those obsessive interests, I think, that qualify, as nerds, like, your obsessive interest with horror films, and
what's
science
obsessive
fiction.
though? What do you mean obsessive?
That
I like them a lot.
You like them a lot. Yes.
That makes me obsessive.
Yes. So with that being obsessive, with the things like
what about
horror,
science fiction? I like that a lot.
That's right, and exactly. So
I also like some drama a lot. That makes me obsessive.
Yeah, I mean, and you also like musicals.
I do.
I know.
That make me obsessive.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, not obsessive.
Or
you
sexual orientation or preference.
It makes you a well-rounded person with many, many interests that people don't necessarily think of as mainstream.
What do you call that? A blurred still?
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
At its core,
yes,
it's a blurred.
Yes, that's you.
Okay. So my upbringing was like, different.
Mm-hmm.
Not different, but the
same.
same.
Well, let's talk about yours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, talk about yours.
Well, I was born.
Yes, we all presume that.
And then I was raised as a child.
Good, man. That was wonderful. Not a wolf or a lion.
No, I was raised as a child. And I watch a lot of television. I think that if you're talking about a so-called blurred or whatever, I think one of the common threads is that we watch a lot of television.
Yeah.
And I watch a lot of television. And so, growing up, it was all about addictions. What is your addiction? Your addiction is, alcohol. Your addiction is, cigarettes. Your addiction is some sort of drug.
Comic books.
Yeah. So the addiction for us was comic books and television.
Right.
And so, television itself is a large, writ large, right? And so this a special thing of television that you watch, which were like, horror, sci-fi, all the old movies.
Exactly.
That they played, endlessly. Yeah. And you had access to it. And, I think that's being addicted to television. You're watching television all the time. In your so-called free time. That's what you did. Now, of course, having, grown-ups, black grown-ups in the house.
Yeah.
They think that, doing that is a waste of time.
Yes.
As well as reading comic books is a waste of time. And so if you did that, you were wasting time. You should be doing things like chores or, working in some sort of labor market where you can bring, money back to home. So none of this activity, the television watching, added no benefit to the family. Right. Added no benefit. So it's like you had to do something.
Wow, Cranston! Hello.
Okay. Yeah. Hello.
Hey, you made it.
Yeah. Finally.
I saw you here all the time. I can see you on the stage. Well, you're right on time.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because you are true blurred. And look at him. He comes here. He is wearing the Enterprise on his chest. Oh my God.
Actually, this is the can't pronounce the name from Lower Decks, their ship.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a true blurred.
Cerritos, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He figured out how to work it.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah. He figured it out. All right. So, Cranston,
I had no idea how to work.
Tell us about your upbringing as nobody cares about you anymore.
Okay.
Cranston.
Discussion about Blerds. The Blerds don't come off very well, and it turns out that nerds don't come off very well, and the word blurred is only on the online dictionary.com. It's not in the Merriam-Webster yet, and you can't get
Wow, you're kidding.
It's not. And you can't get into the Oxford Dictionary unless you subscribe to it. But the derivation was the first mention of blurred was by a character in a Dr. Seuss book back in the 50s. which was the first mention. Then Blerd begot, why am I calling this Ben? Blerd begot Dork, which then begot Geek, which came in around the 60s. The first mention of Blerd came in the late 90s and early this century, when it was just kind of floating around, and one of the first registered instances of it was a guy was writing an article about a black person who liked the group They Might Be Giants, and explaining it unnecessary for people. They Might Be Giants are the people who did the theme song for Big Bang Theory. That's They Might Be Giants. And they said that the black person who liked that would probably be nerdy and would probably be interpreted as being white. So the first earliest derivations of Blerd was somebody who was either white or trying to be white or something like that. They said the first, I guess, more positive version of it came in an episode of Scrubs in 2006, where Donald Faison used the name of the character to describe somebody else, and then they started calling him one. So, and the bad thing about Blerds, because you can't do two screens here, but the dictionary of that Merriam-Webster does have nerd in their dictionary, and it's described as I can't read my own writing as usual, an unattractive, socially inept person, especially one who is slavishly devoted to intellectual or academic pursuits. If you're looking for a doctor or lawyer, that's kind of a good thing. But
no, you don't want an unattractive lawyer or doctor.
I know. You must be attractive.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, now they say you didn't have to be all of those things. You were just at least one of those things. Pick one, and that's it.
Okay.
Let's say that again, so I can pick which one I want to be. I know I don't want to be unattractive. What else?
What else do I get?
What else is there?
You're socially inept.
Nope.
Okay. Well, all right. That's it. So
That's it.
Well, that's it.
We get to be smart, right? We can get to be smart, right?
You can be smart, but they describe your intelligence as excessive or
okay. I got that.
Which is
we'll take the excessive intelligence one. We don't want the other one.
You're too damn smart.
We don't want the other ones. We'll take that.
You're offensively smart.
Yeah, we'll claim that one. Okay.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there are some qualities where you do want to do that. You don't want to be, let's say, one of the lawyers at an impeachment trial who was saying,
right, because they were also unattractive and not very smart.
Am I? So yeah. Or you could be Rudy Giuliani, and then you could be,
unattractive and not very smart. Right.
Yeah.
So
he's not a nerd.
No, he's not.
He also has gas doing his.
Yeah, that's not good. So, Cranston, tell us about your nerdy upbringing.
Well, I think my nerdy upbringing, I was thinking about how do you become one, and I think it's a matter of generational attrition, that you pick it up and then you get opportunities to express it. It's like that scene in Close Encounters where they're talking about the people that made it to Devil's Mountain saw the mountain on TV, but the ones who might have been drawn just never got the chance because they missed it. That in the South, in my part of the South, as Otto was saying, that your interests were utilitarian. Either it was something that was going to make money for the family, first of all, kind of like if Walton's Mountain was a sweatshop or something, or it was going to be, there was no point in doing it. Mm-hmm. So I remember my father was, I said I call him a proto nerd because I think the thing that most people who are Blerds have in common is there's something you're attracted to and you decide to do it regardless of whatever else might be standing in your way. So he wanted to learn how to play the piano, so he taught himself how to play piano. He taught himself how to read music. He used to make up stories. He wasn't an artist, but he would just make A's and B's for the characters, and he'd make up stories and things like that. He would tell me about that. And then he encouraged me. He wanted me to be Doc Savage, like that super well-rounded. So he wanted me to be a star athlete, learn how to play the piano, straight A student, graduate college, and do something, working on the railroad and make some money or something like that.
Yep.
So they also wanted to make sure we could read, so that was good. You could do that. And he had a part-time job where they were pulping magazines, and so they would and they would just rip the covers off, and then they would pulp the rest of it. So he would just collect all of these comic books and everything, and he would just bring me stacks of them when he came home. And so the fact that I was sitting there reading comic books didn't bother them at all. And stuff.
Wow, you're a lucky kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was thinking about, there are a lot of kids who wanted to do things like that, and they didn't do it. But my parents were basically, the basic thing was to make them some money eventually, and to keep us quiet. And so within whatever they could do, they would do it. When I was in sixth grade, so I was 12 years old. They said, "What did I want for Christmas?" I said, "I wanted a typewriter," and they got me an old. I don't know why I'm doing all these hand gestures. An old Royal manual typewriter.
Ooh.
And then a couple of years later, I think I was like in eighth grade, I said, "Well, I want an electric typewriter." They got me a Royal electric typewriter for Sears. And whatever I was doing, they didn't mind it. They wanted to encourage it, as long as, it was something productive in some way or some form, something like that. And contrary to and this is something I think, like in the definitions about blerds, is those things, blerds or nerds, are things that are written by people who do not see themselves as part of those groups.
Exactly.
And there was one article I came across where they said that you're a blerd if you self-identify as one. And that's what your participation is. But the thing is, I think that the thing that they hear about, that Black people are anti-intellectual and Black kids didn't want to didn't want to succeed in school because they were going to get beat up, being accused of being white. I think it's something that whoever other observers came up with, and they put it in the literature, because that was not an experience that I had. When we had all Black teachers, they encouraged us to do well. They wanted you to do well. And it was like the kids that were, going to Christmas tree the test and sleep in class and everything, they knew they weren't going to succeed. But if you could, you had no excuse not to.
Right.
So it was kind of encouraged. So that whole thing about, they want people to succeed in that kind of thing, that's a myth we need to kind of get away from, or something like that.
Do you think that then became like a byproduct of integration? That concept, like when you see old movies where you see the basically Anglo kids, and there's a smart kid and they beat him up and they treat him really badly. Do you think that part of the society became part of our society once we were integrated with them?
I think that was a thing that had more to do with ethnicity and less to do with ethnicity and more to do with economics, because in that the parents of means always are going to make sure their kids had the best education, go to the best schools, and do this kind of thing. And I think if you had lower economic parents, you had a choice between, I can send them to this band camp this summer, or we can eat. So which one do you want to do? And I think that's what it came to. And I think that the whole thing about the violence against people who were inclined to do something like that was just a product of something else. I mean, there were kids who just wanted to beat you up no matter what. There were kids at better schools who bullied other kids too. But I think part of it is just the classism this society has in general, that you demonize people based on their economics and first, and then everything else later. It's more class than it is anything about intelligence.
Yeah, but you know what? But then when you were in schools, everybody was in the same class.
Mm-hmm.
And still, in a social strata, basic social strata, still children who were supposedly the nerds still got, to some extent. In my school, not so much, I don't think. I think that was like, when my schools were mostly, Black kids, few Hispanics, mostly Italians and Jews were all in school. And everybody was trying to pretty much do better. And I don't think there wasn't that, but I couldn't, it could be that way. It's maybe just that I didn't run on those schools.
Yeah.
With the people who were that way.
To me, I had a lot of fights.
Me
I don't
too.
think I ever had a fight because smart.
Me either.
It was based on some other thing. And the thing with growing up in New York City is that before you are, the weird perversion of it is, before you are, the more opportunities are available to you if you have someone directing you to the opportunity. Right? So we had a lot of white teachers who would tell us some things that were available, opportunities for cultural advancement and all this other stuff. But the majority of poor Black kids didn't know any of that stuff existed or couldn't take advantage of it. And I think it's set up that way. It's set up that way. But I think, the most trouble I've ever got for being smart is with people who shared my last name on my bloodline. Is, well, what are you doing? Why are you wasting time? Get going to be a garbage sanitation worker. Get something consistent.
Yeah.
Do something that's predictable. That you have this dream about doing this thing. Nobody knows how to do it. Why are you doing that? Nobody reads comic books. But you. Nobody watches crazy monster sci-fi movies. You. So it's more of an outsider being in your family than it being an outsider on the outside.
But see, for my instance, I was different. All of my entire family, we were all insiders. Everybody else was on the outside. We watched science fiction, fantasy, horror. We did all those things. We did the music classes and all that. Growing up, that was just the norm. And there were so many of us. We figured that anybody else that didn't do those things, something was wrong with them. They were the outsiders, and we were the outsiders. So, comic books and things like that. We were big comic book fans, all of us. So, it was, we consider ourselves normal, and I guess that's the benefit that I had of coming up in a family with, many children. But you did too.
Well, I felt normal.
Yeah.
I felt normal on the outside. I felt less normal when the uncle would come over and say, why is that boy reading all those books and watching TV all the time? That's all he does. So it's like, you need to do something. You need to like Cranston said, get a sledgehammer and go build a railroad. So
it's beneficial for your family.
You're not going to watch the TV, you watch it all day long, money coming out of it.
Yeah. And I think that, with us growing up, it was not, I don't know if that term did exist, because, as Otto was saying, attached to people like Steve Urkel, who wants to be called that? But it's only become more acceptable now, since it's been like this broader network of these different interests that are coming together, like the people with the music, the people with the gaming.
It's also gaming. It's also the nerd thing, right? It's like the people who are so-called nerds now are people who are billionaires, like Bill Gates or Zuckerberg or something. So if you're a Black version of that, you're celebrated.
Yeah.
But it's not in the Black community to a great extent. It's kind of the Black communities, whether it's because of integration or whatever, the Black child who's intellectual, nerdy, quote unquote nerdy, is ostracized to a great extent.
And it's really rough because it's hard to build relationships with other people if there's this concept that because you have certain interests that you're not cool or you not good dating material. All those things I think are really hard on kids who've been identified, not self-identified as nerds, but who have been identified, by others as nerds. And I think that's, something, or Blerds, but I think there's a
coolness to it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there is a coolness to it. People blerdy by nature, that's okay. because then you find out there's a whole tribe of you out there. You weren't alone at the very beginning. You thought you were, but then you go out in the world and find out you have now things like Black science fiction and fantasy society. It's State of Black science fiction. You have us with other sci-fi. You have, like sister sci-fi, all these different science fiction and fantasy groups.
But Black people back in the day weren't allowed to fantasize and dream and stuff like that. So we had to read like instruction manuals or something. That's all you're allowed to read.
Yeah.
So if my thing was reading Greek mythology. So the section of the library in our school library I used to always go to, and I just read everything in that section, and then that became my section. I became legendary of work going to that section. But the kind of things that Black kids back in the day were encouraged to read wasn't really fantasy. I mean, you remember back in Philadelphia, the kids in the second grade, they're reading a book about a kid that lived in a house that building that's supposed to be demolished. And then the kid has to figure out what he's going to do to
his family.
It's like, what the hell is that?
They moved to another family and become squatters.
Yeah.
And this is what they had children in the Philadelphia school system reading, little Black kids reading. It's like, well, and we were asking them, okay, well, how about rhyming? Like Dr. Seuss. They had no knowledge of that because people take our kids and just.
That's not going to help you survive.
Let's scrape up. You need to learn how to be a squatter.
Yeah. Because bad crap is going to happen to
you. Right. Not told or even encouraged to have fantasy lives or dream of fantasies. Like, my gosh, I mean, even if we talk about sometimes on our show, Saturday nights at 9 o'clock on Talk Show,
8 o'clock
Central Time.
But the thing is, you are not allowed to fantasize.
That's right. That's the thing. It's not allowed
to catch you fantasize.
Yeah, and think about on the show, we constantly talk about that fact of our kids not being encouraged in the way of fantasy, encouraged to fantasize or create worlds, in their minds and build upon them. That you're supposed to live right here. That concept of keeping it real, which always drives me insane. That is like drummed into our children's heads, banned on their head. That you're supposed to live only within the confines of this existence, this day-to-day existence. You don't get to go anywhere else in your head. You don't get to create, your own universe. That is, our children are deprived of that. They're told that this has no value. And I think that's the biggest problem that our children are taught early on.
Well, that doesn't have any value, and because you like it, you don't have any value.
Exactly.
So it's all rolled up to one.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, when I was growing up, that fantasy world didn't have any value, no concrete value in the real world. And the fact that I liked it, it's almost like you gotta read it or watch it. It's like watching porn or something. Let me read the Iliad in the closet or something. I don't want anybody to catch me reading. What are you reading? The Odyssey? What did I tell you about reading the Odyssey? You should be reading Grey's Anatomy or something.
Yeah, to teach you to be a doctor or something. So they knew what that was.
This garbage.
Yeah.
Comic books will make your mind into rubber.
Mind too much. Yeah, but I mean, those things that we enjoyed growing up, and I think we were lucky. I was in the sense that I lived in such a closed society with regard to my immediate family that we were able to do that. I mean, outside our immediate family was not the same thing, but within that immediate family,
your immediate family valued books, comic books, and valued like fairy tales. Books of fairy tales.
Absolutely. We got books all the time. I think my mom worked at a school. They had old books and stuff. We would get the old books, to read. I mean, we had remember they used to people come door to door to sell those little children's encyclopedias, Childcraft. They bought those for us. I mean, as well as
but those are different though.
But as well as
encyclopedias are different books because
but they had like children's stories and stuff in them.
But Black people, I think back in the day, maybe not so much now, they thought of books as Cranston said, utilitarian.
Yeah.
So these books had knowledge in it. They're not talking about.
Yeah, but we got storybooks. We got storybooks when I was growing up.
That's not how Black people. That's how Black people came to books.
Well, that's true.
Black people came to books
as a means of getting an education, instruction, teach you how to do a job. to go to agricultural and mechanical schools. They can't just say, I mean, in fact,
pay the rent.
But that's the whole thing that even our schools, like, you have FAMU, this wonderful institution, agricultural and mechanical, because they just couldn't say Black kids going to a liberal arts. Yeah. I mean, did you think the state would support that?
Yeah,
Black kids
books are not
like,
fantasy.
Even though that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what is liberal arts, but you can't call it that. Those people, they lose their minds thinking, Black kids are writer. Yeah, what? You're trying to be a philosopher? What's
I think
for you?
Well, I think what it could have came down to, because you have to remember that in some parts of the South, up until like the 60s, that they would just shut down like public schools so you could go work in the fields.
Mm-hmm.
And it got that kind of utilitarian thing that also there was a sort of a self-imposed by, imposed by society and perpetuated by us, caste system that if your parent, whatever your parents did, that's what you were going to end up doing. And you couldn't jump into something else. So if your father was a longshoreman, like my father was, you had a chance of being one and stuff, but you couldn't teach. You couldn't do this, that, or the other because that was your destiny. That's what you were going to do. And so if whatever you were doing was not geared toward you achieving your destiny, it was a waste of time. And it could either be benign, like it just kept you quiet and it didn't cost anything. That's how it was in my house. As long as it didn't cost them anything and we were quiet, we could do it. But it said after you make your honor roll, you're going to do this, that, and the other and stuff. You're going to try to get a job at the post office or join the service or something like that. And the opportunity, one thing that has increased the blurred culture is the fact that as coming into school back in the when there was the first group of Black people who could get loans to go to school, that you found out that education was something good. Now, unfortunately, a lot of us ended up with a lot of liberal arts majors. There were a lot of people that majored in criminal justice with no chance of getting into law school. A lot of people majored in fashion design and everything like that. But you went to school when you had children. You encouraged your children to go to school, and you gave them opportunities that you didn't have. And they had the freedom to choose these things. So I'm like amazed. I have nieces and nephews in their 30s now. And I always ask them, you don't tell me what they do, but what do they do? And my niece is an analyst. And I said, well, what does she analyze? So don't worry about it. She's just an analyst. And working on, and she works even before the lockdown, she worked from home as much as she did in an office setting and stuff. She is always with this ever-present laptop. I still can't tell you what she does or who she does it for, but she has that opportunity. So that kind of led to us kind of loosening up and getting us out of that kind of agrarian mindset because my mother did not believe if you didn't have a job that either caused physical injury or made you sweat, you weren't really working. Right. And anybody who didn't have a job like that was up to something no good.
Right.
Trust and everything like that.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember one of the first jobs I had on Madison Avenue, and I was 6 years old. I made a lot of money. And I came back home and told my mom how much I made. She said, what are you actually doing? It's like, what's going on? It's like, you got to be doing something nefarious for them to pay you the kind of money. No, it's normal.
Yeah.
And this is normal money. And the money that I'm making is working in the mailroom in a publishing house at Madison Avenue. It's a lot of money for people outside of that bubble. For people inside that bubble, it's pocket change.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the thing back in the day about watching television, television was viewed as a sort of fantasy platform for white people to see the kind of different lifestyles and opportunities available for them. So if we didn't see Black people in those kind of lifestyles and occupations and different scenarios. So what are we watching it for, right? We don't see any Black people doing it. White people's like a training ground. This is how I should walk, or this is how I should dress, and these are the spaces in which I'm welcome.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see any black people in those spaces or walking or talking or dressing that way. So the value of a black person watching television all the time is nil. It's like nil.
Except, I mean, today I was talking to Roxanne. I thought Roxanne Bland was going to be able to join us today. But as we're talking, one of the things I realized is that watching that and having your expectations based on the things that you saw on television kind of gave you blinders about what you thought you could do and what was available. You know, I saw those things, you know, why not me? And I didn't even think that, you know, I said all I have to do is be smart enough, be focused enough, be tenacious enough. I should be able to get those things. I mean, that person got it, why not me? And I did not really, you know, it's like you don't realize there's that glass wall or glass ceiling until you actually hit it. Because you think that everything is merit-based, because you've got to put those blinders on. They kind of, you know, walking straight ahead and anything that's
all you really had to do is want it.
Yeah, that's what we thought, you know. And I think that part of that, in all honesty, that television socialization is kind of one of the things that also helped us, you know, kind of move into those spaces, because we said, well, there's a space, why can't I be in it? Well, I didn't, and when we were kids, unlike what they said about, you know, our Anglo brethren, that they have to see a person that looks just like them doing a thing in order for them to do it. You can see anybody do a thing and say, well, if they can do that, I can do that. You know, I didn't necessarily have to have another black person doing it for me to understand that I could do it. But it was all the better if I saw a black person doing it.
Oh yeah, I want to see them.
Mission Impossible, you know,
Barney,
that's my guy. You know, every week, you know, I'm there, I'm watching. You know, that's, you know, to see, you know, someone who is like you doing that thing, that you, this is a thing that can be done.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
But that lifestyle on TV, you know, that lifestyle you see on TV, like the 70s and stuff, not the 80s so much.
Yeah.
Because that's when racism came back on television.
Yeah.
But the inclusiveness of, you know, like a Love American Style or any of those spaces that was more diverse. It's like, you know, you can go to any space and act like a grown-up. You're a kid, but you look at how grown-ups act. You know, they go into bars, they order a drink, they drink it, they and then they go home. And say, I can do that when I grow up.
Yeah, I
can definitely do that.
Yeah.
But then you go into the 80s, right? I know we're talking about Blerds, maybe getting off a little track, but you talk about the 80s television, you talk about Hill Street Blues, and when, you know, everybody who looks like you is a sweaty, a greasy criminal. You know, it's like, wow. Maybe I can't do all this stuff.
But and you don't even realize it until you're much older. I mean, I became an adult and look back on that. I said, why in the world would my parents let me watch Hill Street Blues?
That number one rated show.
I know, but it was horrible the way it portrayed black and brown people.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think what happened with that is, and what you ran into is that it had two purposes for that. I think a lot of black people never really accepted those portrayals. I think we talked about it before on the podcast, but my mother absolutely 100% hated Good Times. She could not stand Good Times at all. She would hate watch Good Times before hate watch was a concept. And once I asked her why not, and she said, all those people do is complain about being poor. Okay, you know you're poor. What are you doing to get out of being poor? So the black people who watched those things knew what was going on. But the other people who watched those shows, to them, it was a documentary that explained everything.
Right. This is how black people are, you know?
And the sad thing is that we did not look at each other like that, because we could point to people who have succeeded, who have done this, who could hustle and do something and compete. But you move out for a job interview, you move into a larger circle, and the only thing they saw is somebody like JJ. They saw somebody like what's the song? Where's my mama? Who's my mama? Whatever it was. That's what they saw.
You're right. You're right.
We know it's not real.
No. They look at these shows like it's a Ken Burns documentary.
Yeah.
And we look at them like it's a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah, exactly.
So you expect a rabbit to be able to walk on two legs and eat a carrot? That's crazy.
Right.
But this is Ken Burns.
I had a guy that came up once, and of course in the dorms and stuff, that you even if you went to a school that was integrated and stuff, whatever, you had Black and white people in the dorms, but they had kind of separate lives. You went at each other in the kitchens and the shower, but other than that, totally different existence. And they would tell you things that were meant to be complimentary or understanding, but they really weren't. And this was before we knew the concept of microaggressions or just micro stupid or whatever. Mm-hmm. But this white guy came up and he said they had a dance. Well, first of all, if it was a dance that white folks were going to, you probably didn't want to go anyway. But he said, okay, but you're making conversation. He said, so, they had a funky chicken contest and a white guy won.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, okay. And he says, you should have been there because, like, a black guy can outdance a white guy anytime. And I'm thinking, well, obviously he's never seen me dance, but
some random black guy.
Yeah, that's right.
We can dance, we can sing, we can do this, that, and the other. I was sitting outside a restaurant back when we could first go back, and I was waiting for. I was going to meet somebody, and this guy who just happened to be white by coincidence came up. And he just took one look at me and said, "Where'd you play football?"
Huh? Really?
So the thing is that these what become stereotypes that are perpetuated are things that limit us to quote unquote larger society.
Yeah.
That being said, there were gatekeepers in our own ranks that did the same thing. And Big Emerson had once said that when she was graduating high school, she met her counselor and said that she wanted to go into medicine. And her counselor started telling her, well, you could do good if you went into nursing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that we limited ourselves because, and it's like you had said, because you didn't see anybody that looked like you doing it, other people that looked like you figured you couldn't do it either. Yeah. And they're all surprised when you did.
Well, it's called the pullbackers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People pull you back.
Yes. What are you doing?
What that is it's systemic racism. They're taught to do it because I think, I don't know everything about, this African Black History Month. I don't claim to know everything about Black history, but it seems to me from what I do know that a lot of Black people who wanted to do something other than what's typically done, like be a professional or do some other thing other than working in the fields, they were called uppity and they paid a price for it. Not only them, but their family members. So the pullbackers, the reason that we have pullbackers is they're doing it for a reason. Yeah. It's a reaction. It really is.
And they think they're protecting you.
Yeah. And themselves.
And themselves. Yeah. Yes, and themselves. From, any, blowback that may come from your ambition.
Yeah. So you get visited by the Klan. So you got this boy Cranston who let me show you something about books. They put you on something and burn you along with books. Or something.
But you talk about this. The concept of being a blerd, in that sense, even if you think of it, is kind of like revolutionary. It's almost rebellious, isn't it? To be the people that you have these interests and you're going to follow it, even though you have people in your family or outside of your family that look at you and say, why are you wasting your time on this? But you're so focused. Mm-hmm. You are so into the thing that you're doing that, you wear that as a badge of courage. That
is it really? Did you feel courageous when you were doing all that stuff?
When I did the things I did remember I did most people because I had a whole army and a whole platoon. So it was a whole platoon. No, I said I didn't have to feel courageous.
Oh,
I was going with the flow. I didn't
have any army.
I was moving with a herd. So I don't know. Maybe if I had to do it for myself, no, I was a herd. So we were all doing it. So it was all cool for us.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily feel courageous, but I know one thing. I wanted to do everything.
Right. But we never went to school though. Oh my God! Fearless leaders trying to tell us time to go.
It is time. I want to thank you all for this wonderful discussion. We've had an amazing day. I want to thank everyone. Yes, they enjoyed it. Thank you so much to our panelists, Penelope and Otto Flynn. Thank you so much, Mr. I want to say your name, Cranston Burney, for this discussion. but we need to let the DJ in because it is time for our next program. Thank you so much. Yes, so get some water, go to the bathroom. It's time to dance. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, take care.